Hello, everybody. My name is Chris Service, and I'll be your MC today. We are moderating the chat, and we encourage everyone to say hello and let us know if you have any questions throughout the program. We will have a Q&A session towards the middle of our program after one presentation, and then another one at the end. So if you'd like to think of some wonderful questions to ask our guest speakers, please make sure that you have those ready when we get to those Q&A periods, and our United Way staff will be happy to answer them for you. Stand by, and we'll be starting in just a few minutes. For those of you just joining, welcome. My name is Chris Service, and I'll be your MC together for Alice event. Make sure you say hello in the chat and let me know you're here. If you have any questions throughout the program, we will be having some Q&A sessions. When those are happening, ask those questions at that point in chat. You are all muted through the presentation, just so 100 voices speaking at once, but we are in that chat box, so if there's anything in there, they will take care of that for you. We'll be getting started in just a few minutes.
The problem of poverty is definitely getting more complex.
The pandemic has only exacerbated those problems.
It's relentless, all of the different triggers that can push people deeper into poverty instead of lifting them out.
It is getting more difficult for our communities to have economic stability.
The issue of poverty is an issue that we still have a lot of work to do, and the only way we can do this work is as the community comes together to find solutions to help everyone in our community thrive.
United Way of Pierce County sits in a really unique place to see the barriers for bringing families out of poverty.
We adopted the goal of lifting 50,000 families out of poverty by the year 2028.
The significance of United Way's role in lifting 15,000 families out of poverty is huge.
We know that the focus on 15,000 families is not just 15,000. That's intergenerational change. That's families, their children, their extended family relationships. It's really an important goal to be focusing on bringing families out of poverty.
When we work together, we basically provide opportunities for everyone.
When we lift a family out of poverty, everybody's benefiting. Not just the family, but businesses in the community, social services in the community, the welfare of the community.
Equity's kind of at the root of a lot of the barriers that are in the way for people's progress, and we need to not shy away from that. It needs to be addressed front on.
When we think about the Alice families, from the business community, from where I sit, I think it's really important to make sure that we understand how equity really is important to our entire community.
And the only way we can do this work is as the community comes together to find solutions to help everyone in our community thrive.
If we're willing to work with our neighbor, empower that person, trust them, and work together, then we're going to build our communities back up to where we all want them to be.
This issue of poverty has only increased during this pandemic. United Way hasn't backed down from that. They've gathered the community to come back and get stronger to support these families that are facing this issue.
They're tackling it in a lot of different ways, and I think that's one of the unique assets that we have in the community, is what United Way delivers.
They convene the right folks at the table, not just our politicians, not just our nonprofit and for-profit, our business, but they also know the importance of the community's voice.
United Way of Pierce County gives me a lot of hope that this work can be done in a very meaningful way, and we're all going to be better off because of it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Chris Service. I'm going to be your MC for this afternoon. It's a pleasure to see you all here today. A few things before we begin. Number one, the best way for you to watch this today is in speaker mode. So if you're on Zoom, just hover over your display and you should say view, and it should be able to switch between speaker and gallery. We want you to have those opportunities to see everybody's faces, but also when our speakers are presenting, some of them do have slides we'd love for you to see. We will have a Q&A session periodically throughout our meeting today. So if you'd like, keep those questions in your mind and then put them into the chat box. And Jarrett Bruni is going to be our moderator for any of our chat messages coming through. But now it is my distinct privilege to introduce our first speaker today, and that is going to be the wonderful Sabrina Chambers. Sabrina, take it away.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you to everyone here for joining us with our Alice talk, shall we say right now. The opportunity for everyone here to learn a little bit more about what United Way is doing. Now, before we get started, I do want all of you to join me in honoring and acknowledging that the land many of us are streaming in from today has long served as a site of meetings and exchange amongst many indigenous people, specifically the Puyallup tribe. We pay our respects to elders, both past and present. United Way honors and respects the diverse indigenous peoples connected to this territory on which so many of us gather. So we want to make sure we acknowledge that. Next, I want to recognize our board of directors. Several of them are here today on the call. And also I would be remiss, but this is a list of our board members. So just give me a warm, join me in thanking them for all the work, the tireless work that they do. But I also want to recognize the United Way staff who have been working tireless to pull this event together. And my understanding, 250 people signed up for this. So I know that was hard work that the staff did. So thank you, staff, for doing that. Over the last 100 years, United Way of Pierce County has brought the community together to address the most pressing needs of Pierce County. And this is exciting. To date, we've invested $350 million in Pierce County. So yay, United Way. And what we're also doing is celebrating our centennial with a goal of raising $8 million for our centennial campaign and with several other events. Now, to date, hold your hats. We have raised $5 million. So yay, 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 yay to all those folks that worked hard the Centennial campaign, and the lead of that work is Emily. So thank you so very much, Emily, for you and your team getting us to $5 million. And the Centennial campaign will conclude with a gala that we're having in 2023. So stay tuned for more information about the gala that we're going to be having. So if you haven't contributed, there's plenty of time for you to contribute to the Centennial campaign and help us reach that $8 million. But today what you're going to do is hear about the updates of United Way's efforts of reaching our bold goal of lifting 15,000 of our Pierce County residents out of poverty by the year 2023. And that's our ALICE. And just some of you may not know what ALICE stands for. And ALICE is Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed. So you're going to hear about data about ALICE, and you're also going to hear about equity and resilience work that's going on in our community. And we're going to look at the impact of the pandemic on Pierce County. And finally, we're going to share what United Way is doing to ensure that ALICE residents have a brighter future, because the work we're doing together in Pierce County will make a difference. While ALICE residents continue to struggle, there have been many stories of hope. And today we're going to highlight some of those stories. First, I would like to introduce the first one who's going to highlight her story is Jana Starks. And Janae works for, she's a navigator for workforce at South Sound 211. So Janae, please share your story with us.
Thank you, Sabrina. And hello, everyone. My name is Jana Starks, and I am the workforce navigator at South Sound 211. As the workforce navigator, I'm allowed the opportunity to work very closely with community partners. The goal is to help Pierce County residents get employed with a livable wage. This work does help that bold goal to lift those 15,000 families out of poverty. And I myself was a 211 caller years ago. The experience I had with 211 helping me find resources that I never even knew existed. That's what gave me the passion to work for an agency that can help struggling families make it through those tough times. I was a young mother of 2 with a sick newborn, so I lost my job due to my baby's illness and was not sure where money was going to come from to help keep a roof over our heads. I walked into the local DSHS office to get some help, and I saw a poster, and on that poster it was for 211, and it really changed my life. On it was a simple statement: need help and have nowhere to turn, call 211. I did. I called and I poured out my heart to this nice young man who took the time to listen to me, tell him all my problems and through my tears, and he helped me find a lot of resources to help support my family. Those resources that he provided me really helped me until I was able to get a new job and I was back on my feet. Throughout the years, because of that call, I would randomly send in a resume to 211 and hope that I get to work here one day. And finally, I got that call, and here I am. I'm full of passion and empathy to help those in need. Now I get to be that kind voice on the phone, listening to people share their stories during a moment of crisis in their life. So I understand them so well. I am able to get them through these tough times by listening to them, providing those community resources that they called for, and even providing some resources that they weren't even aware of, like me. To take it a step further, I'm then able to assist those looking for work to get connected to an agency who can jumpstart their employment search. 211 and nearly 20 community partners have a shared referral system, which offers services to Pierce County residents directly, where we're able to refer each other for those services and get them the employment help that they need without them having to search for this help on their own, which can be a very daunting task. I received a referral one day from one of our partners who needed some assistance with a client of theirs. I was able to provide Brittany with some resources for gas and for food. So I followed up with her to make sure that she got all that help that she needed, and she said, I did. And not only that, was she able to start a paid internship with that community partner. They got her to an employer, she started, she got it paid, and she was on her way to becoming successful. So I said, hey, Brittany, I know last time you had a problem with transportation. Well, we have this program called Ride United. It's a partnership with Lyft and United Way, and we can get you to your internship for 3 weeks free. So there and back. And she was like, yes. So she was really excited. She was able to stretch that gas, the money that she had, until she got her first paycheck. And so at the end of her internship, Brittany, she called me back and she told me she was hired on permanently with that company that she got to intern for. So she was super happy. And she thanked me and she cried a little bit, but you know how that goes. And so now she was able to make that living wage and take care of her and her children. And she said the plus side was that she was now working for a company that specialized in the field she was going to school for, which was social work. So 211 has been able to reach so many people from so many different walks of life and provide assistance to get so many of those people where they need to be, out of poverty. I am so proud to be part of this work each and every day. When I think of 2-in-1, I think about the song Lean on Me by Bill Withers. Sometimes in our life, we all have pain, we all have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend and help you carry on. So just remember, when you're going through something, call 211 and let us be the friend you can lean on.
Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on.
Thank you so much, Janae. That was wonderful. And I'm glad that you had us share that song as well. Now I would like to welcome our next speaker, which is going to be Jim. Oops, hold on one second. Let me get that slide up for everybody. It's going to be Jim Cooper. Jim is the president and CEO of United Ways of the Pacific Northwest. Jim, all over to you.
Thank you, Chris. I'm just dropping a link in the chat to what I'll be talking about for everyone. If you have a chance to take a look at that, I'm going to pull up my screen share here. And first of all, I'd like to just say thank you to all of you for being here and caring about the great work that the United Way of Pierce County is doing to help Alice and their community and in your community. My job is to introduce Alice and the Alice Report, which is a groundbreaking body of research done by United Ways across the country in partnership with the United Way of Northern New Jersey. Alice stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. And what this is a look at the actual cost of living and what it costs for someone who's working to survive in every community in the United States of America. When the reason for Alice is to combat the federal poverty level. So I'm guessing everyone on this call, in this room, knows that the federal poverty level is not accurate. No services are based on it by itself. In fact, services and benefits can be based everywhere from 200 up to 400% of federal poverty because it is so far out of whack and hasn't been recalibrated in quite some time. And so when we look at the poverty rate in Washington state, we're better than the national average. We're at about 10% poverty, but that doesn't count the people who can't afford to get by from every single day or every single week, people who may be one broken down appliance or car breakdown away from not being able to feed their kids that month. It can be pretty significant, as I'm sure you all know, or you wouldn't be here today. And so in Washington state, our Alice percentage is 23. So we have 33% of Washington households who are struggling to get by every single month. And it's actually, pretty good compared to the nation. When we look at the national comparisons and we can see that Washington is better than almost every state in the nation. And that's with the most regressive tax system in the country. And we are beat by Wyoming, North Dakota, and Alaska by percentage of population. So no one would have ever thought or even been able to guess that, given what we know about our state. But when we break down the data, we see a pretty different story in our state. And I think this is where the Alice conversation is so important in our ability to disaggregate the data and see who's really struggling, because not 23% or 33% is not similar in every demographic. So we can see right away that single female headed households, remember that number was 33%. And single female headed households are running at around 70%. And even single male headed households are in the 50s. When we look at it by age, we can see that both younger people and older people are struggling more, which is probably intuitive. The number of boomers that we have in our society that is continuing to grow means that that 65 and older number will be growing. When we break it down by race, we can see even more discrepancy. And so Black and Hispanic households in Washington state are both higher than the statewide averages, as are Alaska Indian and Alaska Natives, as well as two-race households. And so you say, well, what does that mean? If you say 70% of single female headed households are struggling to get by every single month, what does that mean, Jim? And now I'm struggling because my tab that I want is right behind the Zoom window, so I apologize for this. So what does that mean? That means that it costs more than people have. Sorry, I apologize for being the technical difficulty today. I'm gonna have to go out and come back into it. So when we look at the household budgets in our state, we can see what it costs by category. And in those categories, every single place in Washington, housing and childcare are the most expensive thing for every family. And so you can see that represented here. So this bar on the right is the household survival budget for 2 adults with 2 kids in childcare. And it's running just over $6,000 a month, with childcare being $1,500. Housing is a little under $1,000, and you're like, well, how come that's not the cost of housing, Jim? Well, this is the average cost of housing pre-pandemic. So that's one thing that's really important. The data here is the best representation pre-pandemic that we have in the country, but it's based on averages of what people were paying then. So that doesn't necessarily mean that you can find units available for that cost. When we look at this budget, it's really cool. On this website, we can actually say we had a universal pre-K program and childcare in our state. We could churn that off and see that the cost for these families comes down below $4,500 per month. So I know there's policymakers on here. When you look at healthcare costs and transportation costs for these families, taking those 3 things away reduces that budget by half. And then lastly, I wanted to show you, because so much is really focused on the pandemic, one of the things that people have been asking was, well, when are we going to update this data? And the data is coming. There's some pretty significant issues with data nationally because of the pandemic and underrepresentation in the surveys. But the ALICE Project has done some surveying nationwide, and I think it's really important for people to understand this before Donna talks about the Pierce County numbers, is that, all of the ALICE families pre-pandemic are the families that struggled the most during the pandemic. 42% of them struggling to get by, compared to only 9 above the threshold. 17% had to quit their job due to childcare. 60% lost income, 68% had no rainy day funds, and 44% had elevated symptoms of anxiety and depression. And so I think one of the things that's really, really important as we move forward is looking at the results of the Great Recession and the pandemic, because people didn't recover from the Great Recession. There was 12 months in this last year where childhood poverty in the United States of America was at an all-time low. And in January, with the end of the child tax credits, 3.7 million more kids fell into poverty automatically in the United States. we know that cash works in people's pockets, and we know that it can reduce hardship across the country significantly. You know, that family of four, it cost them $72,000 to get by in Washington State month to month. For them to have a budget of like having a little bit of a cushion and maybe able to save a little money or go to a movie, that's about $115,000 that they need to earn in a year to get by and really be in a good place financially as a family. So there's a lot more coming in this report, and Donna and the United Way of Pierce County will keep you in the loop. But now I'm going to turn it over to Donna, and she's going to talk a little bit about the data in your county and your communities.
Thank you, Jim. And you know, everything that Jim talked about is definitely relative. It can be related to Pierce County as well. And so what I'm going to do is highlight just some of the numbers, and we'll put in the chat box the link to the same charts that Jim shared with you with regards to Washington State. You can drill down to Pierce County. You can drill down to all the counties within Pierce County. So when we look at Alice and Pierce County, and this is based on 2018 census data, as Jim mentioned, it's before COVID. 1 in 3 households in Pierce County struggled to make ends meet. And when I was looking up the population for Pierce County, we're at 921,000 individuals and about 325,000 households. So the households, what's interesting, has relatively stayed the same. And so we've got, when you start to break down the Alice numbers, you know, in Pierce County, 8% is poverty level. And 8% of Pierce County's at poverty, 23% of those households are Alice households. But then we began to look, you know, what's behind that 23%. You know, 46% of 46%, excuse me, of the Alice households are Black, 44% are Hispanic, 43% Native American, and 27% are white. Jim talked about the single head of households. You know, during COVID, female head of households were greatly impacted. And when you look at the Alice numbers, 66% of the Alice household are single female head of households, and 41% are single male head of households. When we think about what it takes for an Alice family to just survive and looking at the household budgets, the cost to have a household budget, household basics outpaces wages. The budget reflects just bare minimum to live and to work in a modern economy. And that includes housing, childcare. You know, as Jim mentioned, childcare is the most expensive expense that a family has to take care of. There's food, transportation, healthcare, you know, having a smartphone, and taxes. And this doesn't include things like savings for emergencies and future goals for college or retirement. So in 2018, the household costs were well above federal poverty level. For a family of four was $12,140 a year, $25,000 for a family of four. So just think about that for a moment. At the federal poverty level, $25,000 for a family of four. Imagine a family having to survive on that. So when we look at the Alice families, we're looking at Alice families that are between 100% of poverty level, that 25,000, and 200% of poverty level, which hovers around, I think it's $54,000 a year. And then and with those Alice families, it's $76,000 a year, $38 an hour. So the stability budget, and this is information, again, that's all on the Alice website, is more of a sustainable budget that estimates higher costs. It includes savings. It includes a category for emergencies, additional, savings to buy a home and so forth. So for a family of four, that's at $125,000 or $62 an hour. And that's a sustainability budget. And that's where we want to get Alice families. We want Alice families to be able to take care of themselves and their family, to not have those worries, to not have to make those tough choices on whether or not to put food on the table, pay the rent, get their car fixed. So when we think about jobs, unemployment is at 4.2% in Pierce County. Jobs, although we're on the cusp of recovery when it comes to COVID in terms of unemployment, jobs held by Alice are still missing from our economy. The amount of wealth lost to Alice neighbors far outweighs the stimulus and the relief efforts. You heard Jim talk about the child care tax credit and the impact that had on families and the impact it has when that goes away. Jobs most likely to be impacted include construction, manufacturing, retail. The hospitality industry was very hard hit. These are the second and third jobs that many needed to maintain their survival budget. Every penny needed to get by. So, Alice families, when you think of an Alice family, they're usually working multiple jobs and are part of the gig economy of that part-time work, where many of them are gainfully employed. They're working hard every day and just simply can't make ends meet. And then the pandemic happened and everything shut down. Prior to the pandemic, Alice was already struggling. The pandemic just exacerbated the struggles and lifted up the disproportionate number of people of color that were being impacted. And the data shows this. The data shows the health and economic crisis caused by COVID-19 didn't impact everyone equally. Lower income households were greatly impacted. Black and brown families have been especially hit hard, with households facing multiple types of stressors: unemployment, debt, lack of childcare, which really just gives greater urgency to the work. But through this all, the stories that we've heard from individuals that I've spoken to, that we hear day to day, Alice is resilient. And this is really about Alice. Alice is resilient. Alice is striving. Our collective work is to create pathways so that Alice ultimately thrives. And so, before we move to the next story, just wanted to pause for a second to see if there were any questions in the chat for Jim or myself.
Just a reminder, if you have any of those questions, put them in there, and Jarrett Bruni will be bringing those into the room for us. Feel free to use that chat box.
And while we're looking at that, I'll just add, I dropped both the high-level Alice report and a new page that includes congressional and legislative district data, which is really helpful when talking to policymakers, or if you are a policymaker and you're thinking about what you might want to do next session. So,
great, thank you, Jim. And
I'm not seeing any questions, Donna. So
okay, all
right. There's one question in the chat, which I'll just clear up real quick, which is about percentages of people not equaling 100% on one of the slides. And that's just because people identify in many different ways. As simple as that.
Good point.
Great. Thank you.
And I guess I did see one just real quick around Alaska and why they're at the top. They do have guaranteed income in the state of Alaska because of oil pipelines and the oil economy. So it's certainly something that we might talk about later in this meeting.
Right. Exactly. All right, so we're going to move to our next story of hope. One sector, as I mentioned, has been hard hit was the hospitality industry. And during the pandemic, we were fortunate enough to receive a $50,000 grant through the United Ways of the Pacific Northwest from Georgetown Brewery, located in Seattle. And then what we were able to do was to get a match, another $50,000 from All in Washington. And what we did is we engaged the Washington Hospitality Association and the Tacoma Urban League to get $100,000 out to restaurant and bar workers that were impacted by the pandemic. So now I'd like to welcome tomorrow Farrell, who will share another story with us today. And tomorrow is Pierce County Territory Manager for Washington Hospitality Association. The association supports hospitality business owners such as restaurant and hotel owners with cost-saving programs, resources to save time, and legislative advocacy. So take it away, Tamorro.
Tamorro, you're muted.
Got it. So we all know how hard the restaurant industry was hit during COVID, as Dona mentioned, and actually over 3,500 restaurants closed in 2020 and 2021 because of not being able to withstand that hardship. During the struggle to stay open, indoor dining was shut down for long periods of time, and workers lost their jobs or lost significant hours. So as she mentioned, in 2021, there were 3 rounds of United Way grants for Pierce County restaurant workers due to COVID. And in total, they went to 135 workers, and the dollar amount was $100,000. Employees were nominated by their owner or manager based on need due to COVID, and those who really deserved a helping hand. So good, dedicated workers. Most were either minority-owned businesses, or the recipients of the awards were minorities themselves. I personally reached out to the owners and managers to ask if they had an employee that they felt would be a great fit for this assistance, somebody maybe experiencing hardship. The most common areas of need were, per the owners' information, were for groceries, for car repairs, for rent, for medical expenses, and just catching up on bills in general. When I delivered the gift cards and spoke directly to the recipients, I was able to stress that their employer chose them not just because of need, but because they were really worthy recipients and valued employees. And I told them they should feel really good about that. I knew that some might have a hard time accepting, charity. So I stressed that they earned this because of their work ethic that they demonstrated, even in the face of challenges. There were many times that I saw tears welling up in their eyes, and it was really moving. So I'd like to share some of the feedback that I received. Fred at Karina Bakery sent me a thank you card that read, "Dear Tamorro, thank you so much for the money to help me move forward and improve my life. I feel as if a huge weight has been lifted off my shoulders. I feel so blessed." Gloria Martin, who is a minority owner at Southern Kitchen, recommended her employee Decorin for the award. And she texted me afterwards with a photo of him holding the gift card with a huge smile on his face and said, "Thank you so much, Tamorro." Decorin was speechless and wanted to thank you and United Way for your generosity. And now he has money to repair his car and catch up on bills. This was just so awesome. Thanks again. With gratitude and peace, Gloria. Another owner said, "Please extend my thanks to the generous donor who provided gift cards to food industry colleagues faced with extra hardships in the last year. I was so happy to see Shar benefit from this gift. This lovely lady is the hardest working and most committed employee I've ever had. She suffered from COVID in January, and due to underlying health issues, her recovery has been very slow. She was very grateful to be the benefactor of this very kind gesture. Thank you again." Indochine Asian Dining and Lounge owner described his recipient, Johnny, as someone who is hardworking and spends his free time helping his family. He's 18, but been on his own, paying his own bills for over a year and still in school. He's Filipino and Mexican. Another states, "Hello, my name is Mary and I'm the general manager of Parkland Farrell's. I wanted to reach out and say thank you for the United Way grant. I had the pleasure of presenting that grant to one of our artisans, Jason, who recently got out of the hospital. He was beside himself and so very grateful for the support. It's been a difficult year for our industry, but help like this really makes our team feel valued as essential workers within our community. Thank you again for thinking of Farrell's and our team." One final letter I'd like to share that deserves, that actually kind of delves a little bit deeper, so I felt deserved the time, provides really good insight, I think, on the difference a leg up can make for Alice families. And it states as follows. "First, I'd like to start by saying thank you so much for the gift card. I can't begin to tell you how grateful I am to receive it and how much it helped. My name is Jacqueline. I'm a 52-year-old single mother working as a janitor at Doyle's Public House in Tacoma. I have worked as a janitor there for a few years now. Before the pandemic, I had worked at both Doyle's and at the Swiss restaurant. Unfortunately, the Swiss didn't make it and closed its doors for good after 27 years. This was over half of my income now gone. I got hired next door to Doyle's for a bartending job, but I was laid off 2 days into it because of the pandemic. So I was down to just cleaning Doyle's and some yard work jobs, barely scraping by. I have an 18-year-old daughter who just recently got a little part-time job at the mall, but no sooner did she start work when the state took my food stamps and medical because the small wage she made was enough to count against us. Then, as they say, when it rains, it pours, because I had a complete brake failure on my car. And the mechanic told me the engine's next, so don't dump a bunch of money in it. 2 weeks prior, I had lost my vehicle now as well. After looking at prices for cars and no money in savings, it would be a long time before I could even begin to look. It was the week after my birthday. Russ Heaton, my employer at Doyle's, called me and said he had a gift for me. He hands me the gift card from your program, and all I could do was cry. It was a huge weight lifted. I knew right away that I wanted to save for a car. Thank you, United Way, for this gift and a chance to change my situation in life and avoid more of the same problems in the future. These programs help create hope for people like me struggling to stay afloat and are a true blessing. Thank you. Sincerely, Jacqueline. In closing, I would personally like to thank United Way for allowing the Hospitality Association to help identify the need and distribute the grants for these restaurant workers in need of assistance. It was really fulfilling, and I felt like Santa Claus. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Tamorro. I am really thrilled. I loved getting the stories from you. I loved getting the stories from Dona at the Urban League, and it's just amazing what a little bit of extra income did during the pandemic to help so many families. So thank you again for partnering with us to get those resources out to folks in need. So now I am going to just provide you with an opportunity to hear about what United Way of Pierce County is doing for Alice. And we talk about the 15,000 households. Well, to date, because of all of the investments from so many wonderful donors throughout our community, 4,300 families have moved from a place of crisis to self-sufficiency. And so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to highlight, how we are continuing to move Alice families to a place, not just being self-sufficient, but to a place of where they are thriving. And so do that. There's 5 different areas that I'm going to briefly touch on. The first is basic needs, 211, Centers for Strong Families, our work in advocacy, and then highlight one of our partnerships. So first, basic needs, which for me is really the heart and soul of United Way. It's what we have been doing for 100 years is ensuring that individuals have access to those very basic services. And because of generosity of donors, we've been able to touch over 156,000 individuals in the last year, receive services that really did help get them to a place where they were stable and to be on that pathway to self-sufficiency. Next, we've invested in 211, and you heard from Janae all the great things that 211 is doing to get people connected. Over 79,000 people connected to 211. We focus in 3 counties, Pierce, Thurston, and Lewis counties, and really helping people navigate during those times of crisis and getting them, again, to those services and supports that they so greatly need. One of the unique things that we do with our 211, that we do here in South Sound 211, is we have navigators. And those navigators are all about ensuring that people have access, but helping them to navigate, as Janae talked about, with helping people navigate services when it comes to workforce. We have behavioral health navigators, parent navigators, in addition to the employment navigators, transportation, our Ride United efforts in a partnership with Lyft, getting people to and from work, to the doctor's appointments, to the grocery store, over 700 rides in this past year, getting people to and from different places. So that's just one, those are just some of the examples with 211. And then there is our Centers for Strong Families. And that is our network of 8 organizations that's all about improving the financial well-being of families in our community. And we've been doing this program since 2016. We're seeing results where individuals are increasing their income, they're decreasing debt, they're improving their credit scores, and most importantly, they're building assets, which is just phenomenal. You know, the other thing that we're doing, and there isn't a slide for this one, but, you know, I wanted to touch on advocacy. You know, if we're going to tackle these complex social problems, we have to identify and disrupt the systems and remove the barriers that are in the way for individuals truly becoming self-sufficient. And with our partners, we bring voice to those that are impacted. You know, this year, the legislative session just closed, finished, I think, yesterday or today, I think is the last day. And we met with legislators. We spoke with them about issues around affordable housing, childcare, you know, temporary assistance to families, for families in need. And I understand that the diaper bill, Senator Noble's just passed as well, which is great because when you think about it for a second, how expensive diapers are. And the bill was passed and will help families get access to those to diapers and those types of supports. And we also work in partnership with First 5 Fundamentals to do a diaper bank, and there's 10 locations throughout the county. So again, ways to help families with those very basics. And then lastly, our partnerships. You know, we have a lot of partnerships and we can't do this work without partnerships. And, you know, I've mentioned some of the 211 partnerships, but I want to highlight GRIT, our Guaranteed Income Demonstration Project, which is a partnership with the city of Tacoma. And we work with, it's supported by the Mayors for Guaranteed Income and the University of Pennsylvania. And GRIT is our guaranteed income initiative. It's a demonstration. It's part of a national research project that's really looking at the efficacy of guaranteed income strategies. And what it is really designed to do is to demonstrate that what a modest, no strings attached cash investment can improve economic stability. It can housing, security, mental health, well-being, and reduce poverty in our community. And so what we have done, we kicked off in December. We spent a year planning and working out all the kinks with this initiative. 110 individuals in 4 zip codes in Tacoma are getting $500 a month. It started again in December and it'll go through the following year. And through that, throughout the year, we'll be collecting stories and collecting research. And we should have a full report on that research. I think in 2024, we'll have all of that research. But, you know, again, this is really about how can we affect policy and how can we show the efficacy of these type of efforts? And we saw it with the stimulus, we saw it with the child care tax credits. You know, at the end of the day, again, we're all in this together. And United Way is committed to fighting for every person in our community. As part of our vision for equity, we have deepened our commitment to this work. And we know that we can't do poverty reduction work without addressing systemic racial issues and disparities that impact Black and Brown folks in our community. Everyone deserves to live in a society where they are safe, respected, and protected. And each of us has a role to play in creating a more equitable future. And really, folks, this is what gives me hope. And so I'm going to turn it over now to our next speaker to share his story of hope. I have gotten to know Markiss, and I'm just really thrilled to introduce him. He's a longtime resident with deep roots in Tacoma. He has a passion for his community and for uplifting those in need. He and his wife Ashley started iHall in 2018 in Tacoma, and I'm going to turn it over to Markiss to share his story.
Thank you so much. I first want to say thank you to Donna and everyone at the United Way for all you do for the community, everyone that has their hands in the United Way. You've been pivotal to my family's growth, you know, coming from an Alice family. So I hope today with my short time, I just not only want to inspire, you know, everyone on the panel, but also to our leaders in the community to have empathy for people that work under you and people in our community that are less fortunate. Growing up very early, I was born into poverty. My mother was a single mom, you know, raised me and my knucklehead brother long ago, and we moved from Omaha, Nebraska, you know, escaping a domestic situation, with, you know, and we came here to Washington. Thankful for my grandfather, who is actually a member of the board here, who's my Jackie Robinson, who's my Martin Luther King, who was my hero. I owe a great deal of my growth to him. But just my journey early on was one of a kid just constantly in a traumatic state, a trauma state, just trying to, you know, just that uphill climb of not necessarily knowing who you are or, you know, knowing where you're coming from, but just knowing I always wanted more. And I didn't want to continue the cycle that I was kind of born into. And early on in my life, I had a child really young at 16. And, you know, that played a huge part of my growth aspect. Soon after I had her, I dropped out of high school because there was just so many different dynamics of my life that I just could not handle. I was a great athlete, but my daughter at that point became, you know, the most important piece to me. I mean, and at 16, you know, child support kind of started kicking in, and, you know, just that constant uphill battle, not having an education and that sort of thing. It took a toll on my journey. So it's been a constant uphill battle for me. It was a constant uphill battle, just trying to, you know, better my situation and not, you know, revert back to what's easy, giving up, and, you know, being a product of my environment, to say the least. So as my life continued to grow a little bit more, and I sought out, you know, help and, you know, different resources within the community, I decided to go back to school to you know, to get my GED, high school diploma, and, you know, my associate's degree at TCC. But during my journey through school, I still had to make ends meet, right? So I worked with, you know, community resources, the Boys and Girls Club, and those things, but still trying to make ends meet was darn near impossible at the time. We were expecting my wife and I were expecting our first child. So now I had another mouth to feed, and it was just a constant uphill battle of the cycle of living paycheck to paycheck and just trying to figure it all out. Watching my wife work three jobs at a time to make ends meet was just not the route for me. So eventually, as my academics grew, I graduated, and you know, which was a big thing for me. I grew up with a lot of smart people, but not a lot of them continued their education and were lifelong learners. And that's one thing I pride myself in, is continue to be a lifelong learner. So during my journey at Evergreen State College, and while I was employed at SOAR Academy, again, my grandfather introduced me to Tim Jumper, who was, I'm not sure what his role was at the Sound Outreach, but he introduced me to something I've never heard of or even thought about, and it's just simple financial literacy. I can say that now, but that was something that wasn't taught in my house. I see my mom just, you know, get by with what she can do, working several jobs, not paying certain bills just to make sure food was on the table, lights were on, and that sort of thing. But that relationship that my grandfather connected me with Tim just dramatically changed my life. It just gave me a different thought process, and knowing I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur and want more for my family, and not continue to live under that poverty threshold, and giving my all and really receiving nothing if we're putting a dollar amount on it. So during my journey, I decided to, once I really got an understanding of my finances, and it wasn't the debt, it was just not learning how to properly allocate finances and take care of those small things. But working with Tim at Sound Outreach, and the level of professionalism that was there, and just it's hard to walk in a room like that, especially as a Black man, and saying I need help. Like, that was the hardest thing to do, but he held my hand, and I look at Tim like a big brother. But he empowered me to just continue on my journey. And couple, I want to say maybe 2 or 3 months we're working with Tim, I had a measly credit score of probably 400, maybe 450, somewhere really in the low fours. 2-3 months just of small advice working with them, I was able to get my credit score to close to 700, which with that alone allowed me to get my first car that I've never had before, which at time was a 97 Ford F-150. I've always been a truck guy. I'm from the Midwest, so it was for me it was big, because it was the first thing I could really say was mine. And with that pickup truck, like Donna was sharing earlier, just still trying to make ends meet working at the school, I would work in rideshare. I worked with a company that was similar to Uber, which is basically a delivery service but for pickup trucks. That model was just brilliant to me, because it was something that I definitely knew was necessary in the community, and something that could just move mountains. It also provided me extra income to put away, and pay off debt, and eventually move my family from a 2-bedroom, 900 square foot apartment into a nicer home and that sort of thing. But it also gave me the ability to invest back in myself and start my own business, which was iHaul in 2018. My wife and I took that same 97 F-150 and created a business model around the delivery I shared with you. And that's, 4 years later, that is something we still do, but not knowing how to properly allocate funds and, just be resilient, who knows where I could be. So that pickup truck has turned into a life changer for my family. I was able to remove my wife from, her chaotic job, and, not just, living check to check, and, just trying to figure out what we're going to, what bills are we going to pay, or if we're going to be able to pay bills, just because, we had the financial stability to just keep moving forward, and just, build on our young marriage as young parents, and work on our mental health. So without Tim, United Way, the community has always been in my heart since I've been in Tacoma. And now that I have the ability to, just carry myself in a healthier manner, is giving me the ability to, be there for my community, and look out for children who've come up from similar circumstances as myself. And that's what we're all about. Outside of the business, for me, it's about serving my people, and serving the community. I could care less about the business. And for me, it's the relationships that move me, right? If I can inspire one, that's what I'm here for. So again, I just want to thank, United Way. Really want to give a shout out to Tim. I didn't see him on here, and the Strong Center for Strong Families, for just continuing to do the work that they do, and for all of us to, give someone a hand up. Look out for your hardest working employees, because I promise you, the ones that are at the bottom are probably the ones that are going to give you the most, because they want to get out of their circumstances. So I can say I'm a proud graduate of Alice, right? If that's what you want to consider it. and it's been a pleasure, knowing that my family doesn't have to suffer. We no longer have to suffer. So now it's just about building on our mental health and bettering our community. So thank you. And yeah, hope everyone has a great night.
Well, thank you, Markiss. And it's just wonderful. I love hearing your story, and we just appreciate you and appreciate Tamorro and Janae as well. Just thank you for sharing your stories of hope. And so we're winding up, and I think we're, Chris, did I jump in when I'm going to turn it back over to Chris for a second.
That is okay, Donna. It's okay. We've all got the same script, so it's all good. But I'll reiterate, Markiss, Tamorro, and Janae, it's been wonderful hearing these stories. Thank you for sharing your time with us today and sharing with everybody who's here with us today. We have so many people here who are hearing these stories. And now we promised you some Q&A time so you can ask questions of anybody who was speaking here today. And Jarrett Bruni, Vice President of Community Impact, will be moderating the chat. So let's introduce Jarrett real quick. And then if you've got those questions, put them into that chat box so Jarrett can answer them for you. Jarrett, it's all yours.
Thanks so much, Chris. And we can just go back to the screen. We can all look at each other here. Some questions are coming over in chat. Markiss, if you weren't in chat, which you probably weren't when you were talking, we're getting so many positive iHall reviews here, and also just messages of love from the group. And I do have a question coming in, and Markiss, if you want to kick this one off, and Janae certainly would love to hear from you as well. But we heard a little bit about setbacks from COVID, changes in your family, changes in employment that happen. What advice might you give to people who are doing the right things, but you take one step forward and two steps back?
If I could answer that, is just never to give up hope. Just knowing there's light at the end of the tunnel, as long as you're willing to, keep putting one foot in front of the other. The community, the Pierce County Tacoma community is so deeply rooted in seeing all of us succeed, no matter, what racial background you come from. And that's one thing it's got the big town feel, but really the small town vibe. You're just wanting to see us all thrive. So if I could give any advice, it would just be never give up hope, no matter what your situation is. We're all blessed with some sort of gift, right? And the sooner you can find your purpose, the world is yours.
And we had
definitely would
go ahead,
second,
Janae.
Sorry,
No,
I would
please do.
definitely second what Markiss said. Like, I'm a big Disney fan, so Dory, she said it best, just keep swimming. So you just got to keep putting one foot in front of the other and call 211. There's resources out there that you don't know about that we could definitely get you connected and get you some help and the help that you need. Never, ever give up.
We had a very similar question in chat, which was, what's one thing a person, a part of the Alice community, can do today to better their circumstances? And Janae, I think you might have gotten that one, just keep swimming, which I quite like as a swimmer as well.
Call 211. We can see what we can help you with, for sure. Definitely, there's so many resources, guys, so many.
And the shout out to 211, which I love as well. This is a question for Jim or Donna, but what is the role of a local employer in working with Alice and understanding these situations? What can we do?
Let's see, I don't know if Jim is still there. I mean, when you think about it, more and more employers are, they're aware of, Alice and what Alice is struggling with. And I think, the childcare issue is a huge issue. With the pandemic, the flexibility that many employees had, but there's some jobs where you don't have that flexibility, right? You have to be at your place of employment. And so I think we still have to figure out how we can make sure that children have a safe, a quality place where their parents parents or caregivers don't have to worry while they're trying to go to work and make ends meet. So I don't know, Jim, if you have anything to add.
I would just add that, the success of those employees in the community is the success for that company. So thinking about, if your employees are working 2 or 3 jobs to keep it all together, they're in fight or flight mode all the time. They can't really do anything to support their family, let alone help your small business or your company get to the next level in the community. And so it's a really hard conversation. Some of our partners at United Way do have a whole bunch of Alice on the payroll, and it's important that we help tell that story. And there's really good examples of companies raising their starting wage up to the Alice threshold and using that. And so just think about what your employees are experiencing when they're not in your business.
I'm going to jump in for just 1 second and say, everyone, we realize we're running a few minutes past time. We've got about 5 more minutes of content. If you can stick with us, we would absolutely love for you to be able to do that. Jarrett, back over to you.
Sure, and we can always keep this conversation going offline as well. I did have a question come in, which could be a closer here, and it's just, what can I do to help Alice?
Well, perfect. And a couple things you can do. First, with United Way, you can advocate. We talked about, our role in advocacy and really bringing the voice of the community in the center. So advocating on behalf of Alice families, I think is a way that you can be involved. You can volunteer. We have a lot of things here at United Way, volunteer activities that folks can get involved with. In fact, we have one coming up on May 13th, Creating Possibilities Together, a celebration around Hunger Awareness Month by donating food items. And also too, volunteering at agencies in the community. And then lastly, consider giving, donating to United Way, donating to organizations out there that are doing great work to support Alice families. And so I think we are going to
I
now.
can jump right in. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I can jump right in. I just want to say, join me first in giving a big thank you to our speakers, Janae, Tamorro, and Markiss. Let's just join and just kind of take a second just to say thank you very much for sharing, being brave, and thank you, listeners, for listening and hearing their story. And we wish you all the best. And also, I want to give a big thank you, and we give a big thank you for Jim and Donna for sharing that wonderful data. If you don't know the data, you really can't really make change. So thank you for sharing that. And the biggest thank you goes to all of you for joining us. And we hope we've given you a better idea about how United Way is working with the community to achieve that bold goal of lifting 15,000 Pierce County residents out of poverty, and also have a better idea of the data around equity and resilience in our community and what United Way is doing to ensure that Alice has a brighter future. And finally, this is the idea of creating possibilities together. The theme of our Centennial campaign truly does mean the entire community. With deep respect and appreciation for all our donors and community throughout the 100 years of service, we thank you. We thank you for giving us the opportunity to be a leader in addressing the most pressing needs in Pierce County. As we look beyond this 100 years, we are committed to continue this legacy in involving and making, evolving and changing, evolving, and just kind of adding, listening to those voices and impact along what we do, those Alices. So we can show up for Alices and we show up for you. So thank you again for being with us.